Welcome to another session of our teacher training tips. Today we're going to talk about Stephen Covey's 4 quadrants and how it relates to your martial arts school. Now when he talks about his 4 quadrants, there are things that are important and urgent, there are things that are important, there are things that are not important but they're urgent, and there's things that are not important and not urgent. So those are the 4 quadrants. What you should be doing as the main instructor or your main instructor should be doing is concentrating on the things that are important. So when we teach class, or when your head instructor teaches class, he should be concentrating or she should be concentrating on the 24 students that are in front of them, the parents on the side, making sure all the kids are learning something, they're being entertained, they're being educated, they're getting ready for the next stripe test. The parents know exactly what's going on. You're teaching the benefits, the lessons, the life skills. That's what's important. But oftentimes, things that will come up that are all of a sudden urgent, but they're important. In other words, you're teaching class, and all of a sudden you overhear a parent complaining to your front office person. And they're saying something about missing stripe testing, and they're upset because their child missed stripe testing. You promised to get them ready and restripe test, but you forgot. And all of a sudden, now the parent's really upset. So all of a sudden, you feel compelled, or your instructor feels compelled, to go off the floor and handle that problem. But that's not what you should be doing. What you should be doing is preparing your staff ahead of time so that front-end office person or your head instructor, they're qualified to handle that situation. Another thing, kids are taking class, and all of a sudden the kid over there, he pees on the floor. Man, that's urgent and that's important. We've got to take care of that. We've got to make sure the child doesn't freak out. We've got to make sure the parents don't freak out. We've got to make sure all the other kids don't start laughing and teasing. And you can't go get the mop, and you can't get the towel. That's not your job. Your job is to train those students. So we train our staff ahead of time. If this happens, this is how we take care of it. You're teaching class, and all of a sudden someone's kicking, they slip and fall, they twist their ankle. That's important, that's urgent, but it's not your job. Your assistant instructor or your front office person should know where the ice is, how to isolate the student, how to elevate their foot. Anything that has to do with that type of situation, they are pre-trained on that problem. So we talk about pre-problems in our staff development training. And while we're doing those staff meetings, we actually rehearse. This is what happens, or this is what you should do, or this is your responsibilities if this situation happens in class. So you're actually training. The problem hasn't happened yet. That's a good thing. We got to make sure we prepare in case that happens. So if you're on the floor teaching, you concentrate on what's important. Again, those 24 students, and that's the parents watching the class. You're not going to be distracted. Yeah, it is important, it is urgent, but it's not your job. Your job is with the 24 other people. So we train our staff, we make sure our assistant instructor, we make sure our front office manager can deal with situations before they come up. So that's one of the quadrants that we can immediately delegate to. And it's important, but it's urgent, but it's not my job. My job is to work with those 24 students on the floor. Okay, the next quadrant we're going to talk about that it's a time waster, are things that are not important, but they're urgent. So imagine this, you're teaching class, and all of a sudden a student comes in late, and they should be standing on the end of the mat and bowing in, but they're waving their hands and they're trying to get your attention. Now again, your job, or your head instructor's job, the person on the floor, is supposed to be concentrating on what's important. Again, that's the class and that's the parents, making sure everyone's getting ready for stripe testing, having a good time. That's what's important. But you have the child over there waving his hand, and it's your kind of first tendency just to go over and solve that problem. But that's not your job. That's a job of one of your assistant instructors or one of your leadership members. They should be able to go over and answer that child's question. Or you have a parent's going on the watch and trying to get a kid out of class. Again, you don't attend to that. That's where your assistant instructor or a leadership member is trained in that. Here's another situation. You're teaching class, and all of a sudden you see the person in the left-hand corner, and they have the wrong hand out, and they have the wrong leg back. They're totally messed up. Again, that's something that's urgent. We have to fix that now. But it's not so important that you have to take the time away from the other 23 students. Your leadership team members and your assistant instructors should be walking the lines. They should be watching everyone and making sure everything is done correctly. That's what their job as assistants to do, or to take control of those situations. So again, we talked about the front-end office person and your assistant instructor working on things that are important and urgent. And they're also working on things that aren't important and not urgent. But more importantly, now your leadership team can step in. Because a lot of these situations don't take your expertise. They definitely don't take the front office person's expertise. They don't even take your assistant instructor's expertise. These are things that you're training your leadership team to do. They should be working on these type of situations, and they'll be handling that for you. Again, leadership team members aren't instructors yet. They're there to assist you. And one of the assistant things they do are take care of things that all of a sudden come up in class, they're urgent, but it's not important for you to do it. Someone else can do it with less qualifications. This gives you a chance to spend, again, your time on what's the most important. Again, it's the main thing. You're working on the main thing, making sure your class is well done. And you've got to make sure that you're not distracted by all these little things on the side that have to be delegated or should be delegated to someone else. Time distractor are things that are not important and not urgent, but sometimes take us away from doing the main thing. Something that's not important is not urgent, but sometimes we just do ourselves, is that little kid that comes in and he's got his belt all around, and it's around his knees and half around his neck, and, hey, Mr. Silva, can you help me tie my belt? Well, yeah, I like to do that. It's a fun thing to do, and I can build rapport with that student. But if I'm already doing what's important, I'm on the floor teaching, I really shouldn't be using that time and taking the time away from the 23 other students to tie that belt. That's what my leadership team members are there for, and that's what my SWAT team members are there for. SWAT team members, again, are just kind of learning the ropes of getting on the floor and being role models, but they should be able to tie a belt. If someone comes over and I'm getting ready for the next class and they go, hey, I want to come to Parents Night Out, where do I sign up? I shouldn't take myself off the floor to handle that situation. Against most people's tendencies that they want to do everything themselves. But again, you want to make sure you're spending all your time on the important things and the main things on the floor. So things that are small distractions, they're not important, they're not even urgent. I mean, sometimes someone's belt, they want to have it done, but it's not something that has to be done right away. And it's not that important. I know it's important to them, but it's not that important in the whole scheme of things. So everything in that quadrant should be handled by leadership members or SWAT team members. It's not a job for you. It's not even a job for your assistant instructors. I don't want, again, if all of a sudden you're not in class and you're just walking around and someone needs help with tying a belt, yeah, do that. But I'm talking about when it comes go time. When it comes go time, class is bowed in, and I have 45 minutes of my attention to these students that are in front of me, and I have a job to work with them and make sure everyone has that great experience. The main thing is the main thing. All these other things that come up during the class, I have to make sure that I have a well-trained team. So in other words, I said well-trained. So my SWAT team members, they're well-trained on these little situations. They know how to tie a belt in reverse, so if someone comes over and they need a belt tied, they can do it. My leadership members know when our events are. They know how much our events cost. They know where the sign-up sheet is. They can take care of that. I don't have to do that. Now, if something really important comes up and it's urgent, again, I have a medical emergency, well, I want to make sure a key person's taking care of that medical emergency. So now I have my assistant instructor, or I have my front-end office person, they're taking care of that. But again, they've been trained on that with pre-problems. They know how to handle it. I've gone over and over, so that's even in our manual, what to do in certain situations. So I hope that helps. I hope that gives you more time on the floor doing the main thing, although it may take more time spending with training right now. So you're going to have to write these things down, concentrate on the 4 quadrants, start listing things that could happen that can distract you away from what's important, to work on either what's not important and urgent, what's urgent and important, but do those 4 quadrants. If you need a good visual, just Google Stephen Covey 4 quadrants. You can actually print up one of those sheets and start writing in there all the tasks that happen in class and who should be handling those instead of you. I hope that helps you. Again, that's instructor training. It's taking office training techniques and education training techniques and putting it down into your staff training and on your floor training. Good luck, enjoy, and hope to see you at the convention this year. It's going to be, I keep saying the convention, our instructor college and our program directors college on July 18th and 19th in San Antonio, Texas. Hey, as a bonus today, I just want to talk about safety in class. One thing is I want to make sure this instructor is always on the floor. So once you start go time, which could be 3:30, 4 o'clock, but when people start rolling in the floor, there's always an instructor on the floor. If there's not an instructor on the floor, there should be no students on the floor. So if you have times when all of a sudden your instructor is going to be doing something else and it's not going to be actually physically on the floor, then the student should be allowed on the mat. The student should be either sitting quietly behind the mat, sitting in the chairs, whatever, but no one's allowed on the floor unless the instructor's on the floor. And so it is go time, and there are students coming in throughout the day. I really highly recommend there's always an instructor on the floor. This one safety tip is really important. No one is allowed to spar unless an instructor is present. So if you just have an assistant on the floor or something like that, and all of a sudden kids are out there sparring, if something happens, that could be negligent or will be negligence on your part. So no one's allowed to spar before or after class unless an instructor is on the floor. This one personally happened to me. It happened a long time ago in Coral Springs. I had adults sparring on the floor, and I went off the floor for just, it seemed like a second, it was probably a few minutes, to answer a phone call. Well, one student kicked the other student and ruptured his spleen, and that was a very costly mistake for me for leaving the floor. So make sure that no one's allowed to spar unless a head instructor or a qualified instructor is on the floor. Next thing is we like to challenge students. We like to make them do push-ups. We like to make them do sit-ups. We like them to stretch hard. Just make sure you don't overdo your challenge. The last thing you want to do is to push a kid, push a kid, push a kid. All of a sudden, he pulls a muscle. Someone has some type of breathing problem. So make sure you challenge people, but know the limits. You know, we want to push people, but don't overdo things. Make sure if a student isn't feeling well, they're allowed to step off the mat. And if they have to step off the mat, make sure they're monitored. You know, we had an unfortunate accident at one of our members' schools in Massachusetts just a couple years back. Someone wasn't feeling well. They're feeling lightheaded. They went off the mat and then went off the floor just to get some air. And unfortunately, this student had a heart attack. So make sure if someone isn't feeling well, they don't push themselves. You allow them to walk off the floor or you assist them off the floor. Make sure they're feeling all right, or your head instructor's making sure they feel all right. But again, allow people to step off the floor if they're not feeling well. Make sure all the poles in your school are padded. It's really important. You don't want someone to have an accident and all of a sudden back things up and slip and fall and hit their head on a pole. Also, easy for you to say. Also, if you have little kids with little dragons in your class, make sure all your electric sockets are covered. We don't want anyone sticking fingers in there and having an accident. So walk around your school, pretend like all of a sudden this is your house and you're child-proofing it for your kids. If you have kids in your classes, make sure your school is child-proof. Make sure all your students have protective gearing. I know sometimes you say, well, I've got an upper belt. He's got good control, so he doesn't need his gear when he's sparring a beginner. You know, don't take any chances. Make sure everyone is all geared up. Make sure your students know that it could be dangerous when they go out in the parking lot. We don't want to have kids running between cars and accidents outside the parking lot. I always make sure that parents know that they should drop their kids off no more than 5 to 10 minutes before class, because I don't want kids coming in or out of my school, and I don't want kids running out between cars to get to the parents. So if the parents are going to pick up their kids, I have a rule that the parents have to pick up in the school. I don't want kids running across the parking lot, especially a 7 or 8-year-old child where you can accidentally get hit by a car. Make sure the students, and especially your kids, know how to hold pads. I've been to school where all of a sudden the kids start holding a body shield, someone's doing a side kick, the side kick comes up, and all of a sudden the shield and the foot hits them in the face. Or they're holding kicks for side kicks and they've got the little pad in front of their face, and all of a sudden they get kicked in the pad and they smack themselves in the head. So make sure all your students really understand about holding pads. Make sure if you're doing throws that you have a padded surface. I know some of you guys are still old school and you're doing some techniques, but you don't want to have someone who's supposed to know how to fall or do a break fall, and all of a sudden they hurt their elbows and their wrists. You don't have the proper flooring. That again is negligence, and you're setting yourself up for a lawsuit. So those are just things that you want to do to concentrate on safety. It's one of those things that sometimes we just take for granted. Yeah, everyone's supposed to know, but maybe your staff doesn't know or they don't know all the rules. So make a list of what you believe are safety rules, and next time you have a staff meeting, or especially a physical training meeting for your instructors, that you're talking about the safety rules and make sure everyone knows the rules in advance. Again, the last thing you want to do is have someone get hurt in your school, and especially the last thing is you don't want to set yourself up for negligence. Because even though people sign that waiver of liability, that only goes so far. If you're negligent by leaving the floor or having something dangerous, they can sue you no matter what they sign. So make sure your school is safe, your students have a good time, and no one gets hurt. Hey everyone, Greg Silva. I'm going to start something new this month. I'm actually going to do mat chats for adults. So these are for your adult class. Now I know quite a few parents come to the adult class, so I kind of want to tie it into what the kids are doing. So the message would be the same. I'll be presenting more for adults, but I also want the parents to know what to do to help their kids in class and what the kids are actually learning in the mat chats. So this would be the first week. We'll talk about self-esteem in June. And for the first week for the kids, I kind of gave a message about self-esteem is like a self-report card. You really know what you're doing, and that's how you get self-esteem. So it's not like you get a report card from the school, maybe all A's, but I mean, you could have cheated on all those grades, so you really didn't deserve them. So it's giving yourself a report card. And so it's taking kind of an inventory of what you're doing. I talk to kids about doing their homework. I talk about their patience. I talk about their courtesy. So it's kind of giving you a report card of all that. And if you're getting all A's, you'd have high self-esteem. So for the adult class, I'm just saying, hey guys, what we're going to do today is we're going to end the class just with a little discussion. I want to talk about self-esteem. When I was planning out the self-esteem lesson for the kids, this was really a kind of a hard word to identify, because self-esteem really is confidence with competence. Now, for me to get the kids to understand that, first I have to tell them what confidence and what competence is. But this week we just talked about just a self-evaluation. So I found this poem. I thought it was really good. If you want to get it, you can just Google The Guy in the Glass and print it up for yourself. I know that I had this tape for my mirror for I don't know how many years when I was in college, and it really helped me a lot. I just kind of wanted to share it with the class. The Guy in the Glass poem. When you get what you want and the struggle propelled, and the world makes you king for a day, then go to the mirror and look at yourself and see what the man has to say. For isn't a man's father, mother, or wife whose judgment upon him must pass? The fellow's verdict counts most in life is the man staring back in the glass. He's the fellow to please, never mind all the rest. For he's with you clear to the end, and you've passed the most dangerous, difficult test. If the man in the glass is your friend, you can fool the whole world down the pathway of years and get pats on your back as you pass. But the final reward will be the heartache and tears if you cheated the man in the glass. So as we talk to the kids about taking the inventory, it's kind of neat because, again, as parents and as adults, we want to have a good example for the kids. And we want to make sure that we're someone that they look up to. So while I'm teaching this class for the kids, and I'm talking about taking a self-inventory and giving themselves a report card, you may just want to put this poem up on your mirror and just kind of read it to you. And, when you're doing your hair or shaving or whatever you do, and you're looking back at yourself, are you happy with everything you're doing? Do you pass your judgment? And so I just thought it'd be a cool way to end class today. Anything you can do to help your kids is really appreciated. And again, this class isn't about kids. I mean, as adults in class, we have certain goals and certain things that we want to meet. And self-esteem, I'm sure, is one of them. We really want to feel proud of what we're doing. At the workplace, here at martial arts school, and with your family. So Just a little checkup from the neck up. Again, if you want to print out the poem, it's called The Guy in the Glass poem, and you can just Google it and print yourself up a copy.